Hey, what's up guys, it's Bakes here, and thank you for joining me for today's episode of my random horror reviews. Today's movie is one from just a couple of years ago, 2022. It's a movie that is Danish, apparently. I wasn't actually too sure, but it's saying Danish here on the back. And the movie is called Speak No Evil, like I said, from the year 2022. If anyone saw my video, you would know that this made my top 10 favorite horror movies of that year, 2022. It was somewhere around the middle. I think it was like my number 6 or 5 or something like that. And I'm also pretty sure I said in that video that this would probably be my pick for most disturbing movie, or at least most bleak movie of that year. And if you've seen this movie before, I'm guessing you'd definitely know why. But I was a little bit nervous coming around to rewatch this movie. This was only my second time checking it out for this review. And I wasn't too sure if it was going to hold up from, how it felt the first time around, so I was a little bit nervous revisiting this one, but before we get into my thoughts of this movie, let's quickly go into the plot for it anyway. So, a family of 3 meet this other family of 3 while on this holiday in Italy, and they seem to be very nice, very pleasant people, and they get along during this holiday. But after it's all over and, the families go their separate ways, they get invited via postcard to visit the other family again for another holiday, and the family decide, yeah, why not, and they go across to, I forget where, it's 2 different fucking countries, but, they go across, it's like an 8-hour drive for this holiday. However, during their time together, situations become more and more uncomfortable, and eventually get to a point where safety starts to become a worry. So that's pretty much the plot that we have here for Speak No Evil. Let's move along to my thoughts of this movie. So where I want to start with my thoughts on this movie is actually where I hear most people have their biggest issues with it, or even something I hear this movie often described as. And it's actually hard to argue with people's descriptions or people's complaints because they're not actually wrong, but I do think situations are misread and overlooked. So you'll often hear people describe this movie as a spineless family or a pushover of a family get invited back to visit this other family, something along those lines. Like, you'll often hear the protagonist family of this movie described as either spineless or pushovers or whatever other word you want to use, which again isn't wrong. There's even a line or a moral at the end of this movie being sold as, if you weren't so soft, this wouldn't have happened to you. Like, you let me do this to you. But I do think the scenario in real life, like say you were in this scenario in the real world and you've already gotten yourself in so deep that you're at the point where you're already at the other family's house for this vacation or whatever. Like what I'm hearing, a lot of people would act tough. I've heard a lot of people say, oh, I'd just fight the other dad, or I'd be calling them out on everything straight away. But regardless of how tough you are in real life, or strong-willed, or how stuck to your morals you are, in an environment like this that isn't yours, and around people this unpredictable, because this other family or this other couple are shown to be extremely unpredictable, it's much harder to call people out than what I think a lot of people are assuming, or, they're inserting themselves in the story and they're just going, yeah, no, I'd shut them down straight away, or I'd call them out for this. You are, like I said, these characters are an 8-hour drive away from home. They're isolated with this other family. A family that is so unpredictable. I think it's actually a lot harder than what a lot of people make it out to be. So I do want to continue on a little bit more from the point I was making, and again, I'm not going to say that our protagonist family in this movie isn't soft, because the dad especially is, but it's molded into his character enough to a point where it doesn't feel like, wow, this fucking grown man is a complete dweeb, it doesn't really feel like that. Like, it explains why he and his family, in result, were such easy targets for this antagonist family. Even if you think back to the first act of this movie, he was the one most keen to catch up with this family and go on this holiday to visit their place. Because at the start of the movie, it's shown that he's stuck in a rut, that he is feeling lesser in his life, which again is why he was preyed on during this initial holiday by the other couple. But getting back to the point I was making earlier, even being more confident or strong-willed than the husband, dad, however you want to word it, the situations are just so uncomfortable and the other couple are just so unpredictable that it's hard to just call them out. Like I said, I think a lot of people are undermining how hard of a scenario this is to be confident and be strong-willed. And people will argue that point by bringing up the scenarios where the main family's daughter's safety is most at jeopardy, and I think that is a fair enough point, because if I was one of the main parents and my daughter's safety was in scenarios like it is in this movie, I would be losing my shit and I'd be fucking going apeshit and crazy and whatever. But at the same time, you got to read the room. Calling them out for the disregard of safety potentially puts your family's safety at even more risk. So, as I said, it's definitely understandable. As I said, if that was my daughter in some of the situations that the daughter is in this movie, I'd be fucking going apeshit. I'd be so mad. I'd be fucking swearing, wanting to fight and whatever. But again, read the room. You are so far out of your element with people that are so unpredictable. You got to also think about, the consequences of your actions too. So after all those arguments I can make for why it's a harder situation to deal with than what a lot of people might think it really is, you'd probably just ask the question, why do they not just leave in the night? And they actually do leave in the night a couple of times in this movie because they're just that uncomfortable or that scared or whatever. But that's actually where my biggest issues with this movie come into play. Because there are too many dumb decisions, which I'm going to try not to spoil, but they end up leaving and returning for the most insignificant, things going around. Fuck it, I am going to spoil one. They leave in the night and they're driving and the daughter goes, oh, I can't find my stuffed rabbit. And they're like, oh, don't worry about it. And she starts crying. So then the dad turns around and goes back for the stuffed rabbit. Yes, I know things get worse as the movie goes along, but they've already been through so many uncomfortable and potentially dangerous situations. Yes, the daughter's sad, and the dad in this movie wants to be more confident. He wants to be the man. He wants to be the one that goes and saves the day. But a stuffed rabbit really isn't fucking worth it, and it's a kick in the teeth when eventually turning around definitely wasn't worth it, because, spoiler, the stuffed rabbit was in the car the whole time. But continuing on with, bad decisions and everything, towards the end of the film, the dad's in a panic to get the family out of the house, and firstly, he doesn't tell his wife why, which is dumb. Like, I understand he's maybe trying to not make it a huge panic and he doesn't want his daughter knowing, but all it takes is like a slight whisper of going, right now, this is life and death, we do need to get out, because he's seen some shit at this point, not gonna spoil. That's all it needs. But for some reason he doesn't tell her, which again is a dumb decision. But then it gets fucking worse, because after they leave, they get separated from each other, and then the wife trusts the other family who, go out looking for them and they find her on the side of the road. She trusts them for help and she gets in the car with them, which again is fucking dumb and just doesn't make sense either, because out of anyone having concerns through this whole holiday and for a majority of this film, it was her. And even after all of that, the husband's clearly in a rush to get away from the place. Like, she put that together. She was going, okay, what's the problem? Why are we rushing to the car? And he's going, just get in. As I said, he should have said why, but he's saying, get in. She can clearly tell that he's in a panic to get out. What else would he be rushing away from the house for, other than the family? Like, he's not saying, get in the car, they're fucking out of hot water, or the electricity's shit, or whatever. Like, he's clearly fucking worried about the family. So why would she trust them out of anyone who pulls up on the side of the road looking for them? Like I said, I can put aside, putting up with too much uncomfortable situations, because, as I said, I feel like it's actually harder to call out things like that than what a lot of people make it out to be. But otherwise, my biggest problem is that there are too many poor decisions or dumb decisions made in this movie. Now, so far in this review, I've done a lot of justifying reasons why I feel like people shouldn't be so harsh on particular things, and I've even gotten into a little bit of my issues with the movie. So you'd probably think I didn't like this movie as much this time around on second time watch. But no, and I'll get into reasons why I still think this movie is pretty fucking good. Firstly, it's one of the most uncomfortable movies of recent times for me. and more so because of its awkwardness and boundary pushing, which normally in the horror genre, the uncomfortable aspects come from gore or torture or physical shit. But this movie is just so fucking awkward, and the awkwardness is so fucking thick, and the boundary pushing, it's just so uncomfortable. And when it's awkwardness, like in this one, I feel like it normally works best in a comedy because awkward humor, at least to me, I find funny sometimes. But this movie also has zero humor. In fact, the movie has this constant bleakness and it feels so depressing, like pretty much from the start of the movie before anything majorly bad even happens. It just feels so bleak and dreary, and you're just holding your tongue going, okay, something bad is going to eventually happen. And the uncomfortable atmosphere is created, and it's just extremely effective, and that alone makes me squirm. But this movie also has one of the darkest and depressing endings too, which is not saying, that's a must to make a good movie, but when the ending is just so effective as it is in this movie, I think that also is something that you can give credit for, because this is an ending that has stuck with me since the first time I saw this movie as well. So I've gotten through pretty much everything that I wanted to bring up and really break down in detail. But I do think the performances are all really good in this movie. I think that's another thing that a lot of people undermine with this movie, how good the performances are. But the movie's atmosphere, again, is just so uncomfortable and really well done, but I've gone through that enough. The setting as well is really effective, and the setting genuinely kind of freaks me out too. It's not just the isolated house with no neighbours, off in the middle of nowhere. There's something very specific about it, and I can't quite explain or put my finger on it, but something about the location and setting in this movie just genuinely freaks me out. But moving on to a rating, because as I said, I think I've covered everything I want to. For a score out of 10, I'm going to give Speak No Evil from 2022 an 8 out of 10. I'm not sure what I gave it last time in my top 10 of 2022 video. I think either the same score or maybe slightly higher, like an 8.5 or whatever. But if I did give it an 8.5, like, I'm not saying that the movie's like a major step down this time. I still think that's a fair enough score. I wouldn't be mad if I, boosted it up to an 8.5, but maybe a slight slide down just because a few issues stood out to me a little bit more this time around. And also second time watch, so I knew what was coming, so like the thrills and everything were a little less impactful, but I still think it's a really good movie, and this one actually has an American remake coming out real soon, or maybe it's actually already out. I'm not too sure. It has James McAvoy in it playing the antagonist dad, which I'll check out. I'm sure it will be good, but my biggest concern with that movie is it looks like it's going to be the exact same movie as what this one was. And I've spoken about that in videos before, like pretty recently actually, when I did my review for the Hellraiser remake, which was that the review before this one? I don't know, but when I did my review of the Hellraiser remake, I said that yes, it's not as good as the original Hellraiser, but at least it's something different. This movie looks like, from what the trailers, show, and from what I'm reading, it looks like it's going to be the exact same movie, just done, in English, which I actually understand probably a little bit more than what I, maybe would in the past, because this movie, yes, it came out a couple of years ago, but unless you're like really into the horror genre, I feel like mainstream audiences didn't check out Speak No Evil. So, remaking it in English with mostly the same storyline and whatever, I think will put it into a bit more of a mainstream light. And it might fix up things as well. Like I've seen in the trailer, it looks like the other family puncture the tires, which completely takes out the issue of the family leaving and coming back for really dumb reasons. So it might clean up a few things, but otherwise the trailer looks like it's going to be the exact same movie. And like I was alluding to before, my biggest problem with remakes like that is I'll just watch the original movie if it's going to be the exact same thing. you know, yes, it might still be good, but I just prefer to watch the original. But like I said, it might clean up a few of the issues. James McAvoy is a really good actor, and it looks like from the trailers that he's giving it his all. So I'm really keen for that. But I don't know. I guess we'll check it out. As I said, I'm actually not sure if it's already out or not, so might have to catch up with it if it is out. But either way, thank you for joining me for this review, guys. I appreciate it. As always, let me know your thoughts on Speak No Evil, and I'll see you for another video soon. Peace.